So Göbekli Tepe is such a thing as an ancient conspiracy theory. The site was only approximately 5% excavated. These pillars dates back 11,600 years. It appears to be purposely buried at the same time of the Younger Dryas climate catastrophe.
Up until this point, everyone assumed that Göbekli Tepe was only the oldest temple in the world. The basic foundations of archaeology were shaken in 2025 by a finding. Underneath the site, in a hidden vault, was something so advanced that it shouldn't have existed. Enigmatic inscriptions that suggest a long-lost civilization, indestructible buildings, and an artifact that government authorities are afraid to reveal to the public. No longer is just a mere excavation site. It is the epicenter of a reality that was never intended for humanity to discover. Our entire world is turned upside down by what lurks underneath. First, let's go back to the beginning of the enigma, so we can understand the 2025 findings. Aside from being ancient, the tale of Göbekli Tepe is also peculiar. And as you delve more inquiries begin to emerge. A mysterious and old site is subtly changing our understanding of how civilization began in the sandy hills of southeastern Turkey, close to the Syrian border. Neither a typical history book nor a tourist trap teeming with photographers and souvenir vendors would describe this location. It is with good cause that archaeologists are praising it as a watershed finding in human history. As far as anyone knows, Göbekli Tepe, Potbelly Hill in Turkish, is the earliest known monumental construction in the world. Our hypothetical location here dates back more than 11,000 years, to a period between 13,000 and 10,000 years before the Common Era. That predates not just the Stonehenge and Egyptian pyramids, but also the claimed invention of agriculture. The intriguing part starts here. Excavations have only reached a depth of around 10% of Göbekli Tepe. Everything else is still under the dirt, patiently waiting to be found. The more researchers dig, the more this old mystery seems to be expanding, if previous discoveries are any indicator. In the 1990s, German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt examined what was previously believed to be a modest mound more closely, leading to the first significant finds. His discovery completely upended the accepted canon of historical accounts. He found enormous circular formations of T-shaped stone pillars, some of which were 20 feet tall and 10 tons heavy. Each stone bore intricate carvings of various animals, symbols, and bizarre humanoid forms. These were no ordinary stones, as foxes, vultures, and scorpions make repeated appearances. Snakes slither across the surfaces. Some even go so far as to say that is the first effort at depicting spiritual or mythological concepts. There are no domesticated animals, wheels, metal tools, or written language. People who lived as hunter-gatherers were reportedly too backwards to plan elaborate building projects. So, what gave them the upper hand? Even more crucially, why? The general consensus now holds that Göbekli Tepe served as a sacred or ritual location. The world's first temple, according to some. The premise is that several nomadic communities may have congregated here for ceremonies, such as religious gatherings, seasonal celebrations, or burials. But nonetheless, concerns remain. Why would somebody go to such lengths as to carve and lift massive stones for ritual purposes alone? Without any kind of central authority or even agriculture to sustain such a huge populace, how were they able to work together on such a grand scale? It was Klaus Schmidt's audacious notion that places like Göbekli Tepe may have been the catalyst for the rise of agriculture, rather than the other way around. A big gathering of people gathers for a holy occasion. This is the way you perceive it. They have basic needs including food, housing, and motivation to remain. This requirement may have driven them to cultivate seeds, construct storage spaces, and ultimately establish a permanent settlement over time. The traditional understanding is wrong. farming may have originated in religious or ceremonial practices. Approximately 8,000 years before the Common Era, the location was purposefully buried, adding another degree of intrigue. The decision to conceal it was made by someone, or maybe more than one. They didn't just leave it and let nature take its course. Nobody has ever figured out why. Was it a predetermined procedure, ending a period in their history in this way? Or was it that they wanted to undo what they had done because of something that happened? One thing is for sure, seeing Göbekli Tepe makes us reevaluate our assumptions about hominins. These were not aimless nomads scrounging for survival in caves. Even before the development of writing and metalworking, they were highly organized, imaginative, and capable of remarkable mechanical feats. Göbekli Tepe is still shrouded in mystery, despite its significance. The more we uncover, the more it compels us to question our own assumptions about where we came from. Now that we've explored the physical history of Göbekli Tepe through its stones and dust, the issue of what it all means lingers. Given that many individuals, including scientists and storytellers, have different perspectives, that is when the true confusion arises. There is practically little evidence of permanent occupancy, which raises the possibility that the site is a religious center, where rites, ceremonies, or seasonal gatherings may have taken place. No dwellings, no fireplaces, and no refuse piles. People seem to have come a long way to gather here, accomplish their goals, and then departed. Due to the necessity of a reliable food supply to sustain massive construction projects, agriculture typically comes before monumental construction. Perhaps, as Göbekli Tepe posits, the reverse was true, that people were brought together by common ideas before engaging in farming. Then there's the outlandish notion that extraterrestrials had a hand in its construction. No joke. There are those who contend that prehistoric humans couldn't have achieved such accuracy and magnitude without outside help. Some think it's evidence of a sophisticated culture that perished in a long-ago disaster and has since been forgotten. Despite the dearth of solid proof, these notions have unquestionably captivated the general population. Books, films, late-night podcasts, and TV shows airing during the Ancient Mysteries hours on YouTube all include them. Most of the site is still underground, which contributes to the ongoing mystery and, in turn, encourages these extreme notions. There is a great deal of mystery around what may be the oldest monumental structure on the planet. Why it was buried on purpose is another mystery. In order to conceal Göbekli Tepe, archaeologists think its users purposefully covered it with soil and rubble. Myths take front stage when scientific inquiry yields ambiguous results. Some fringe thinkers have interpreted the site as a star chart, a gateway, or a hidden message from an extinct race. There is a lot of conjecture on the internet concerning ancient technology, energy lines, and possible links to Atlantis. Naturally, this gets a lot of attention in the media, and mostly positive. The more outlandish the notion, the greater the site's visibility, which in turn increases support for archaeological studies. However, it also makes it harder to distinguish between entertainment and evidence-based research. Unexpected events occurred at Göbekli Tepe at the beginning of 2025. Nomadic hunter-gatherers constructed it, and archaeologists thought for decades that it was a ceremonial center. It was never considered a permanent residence. But then new secrets were revealed by the earth, and everything altered. A group excavating the perimeter of the exposed enclosures discovered, much to their surprise, the remains of residential quarters as the new excavation season got underway. Signs of occupation, such as hearths, storage pits, foundation plans, and even flat, smoothed surfaces that were probably utilized as workstations rather than merely scattered stones or imprecise contours. An overwhelming mix of exhilaration and shock ensued after this revelation. Until recently, there was no concrete evidence that the builders of Göbekli Tepe resided on site. The absence of evidence of permanent habitation, farming, or settlement led many to believe that the location must have served as a sacred rest point for pilgrims. What did appear, however, in 2025 didn't appear to be transitory. Surprisingly, there were more than just living quarters. In addition to these artifacts, archaeologists have found stone tools such as scrapers and grinding stones, as well as plant and animal remnants such as wheat stalks, legumes, gazelle bones, and bird feathers. These artifacts suggested that the locals were not just cooking, but also processing food in ways that would indicate a more permanent mode of existence. Preparing meals by grinding stones is a sign of a longer stay. Put simply, this was more like a home than a camping trip. All we thought we understood about human history is shattered by just one hypothesis. It changes the story of when humans started settling down, and how they went from nomadic bands to organized societies if Göbekli Tepe genuinely did support a permanent or semi-permanent population. To top it all off, that's not all of the 2025 revelation. Scans using ground-penetrating radar showed an almost astonishing discovery when the crew moved beyond the initial excavation zones. 15 more, mostly unexplored enclosures remained buried beneath the surface. It is possible that some of these are 15,000 years older than the ones that have been found so far. The majority of the world's population was still residing in caves or open plains during this time, which places them far beyond the era of tamed crops and metal implements. The size is really mind-blowing. More than 200 newly discovered standing stones have been uncovered, which are enormous slabs that were meticulously sculpted and put in circular or oval enclosures, much like the ones that are already known. Across the larger site, archaeologists have uncovered 15 other megalithic temples. So far, we have only dug a small fraction of the way down Göbekli Tepe, less than 10%. Uncovering the majority may take as long as 150 years. Until then, it lies underground. Every shovelful of soil might lead to a new revolutionary discovery. That much is true. The entire narrative was transformed by the 2025 breakthrough, which did more than merely add evidence to Göbekli Tepe's account. For a long time, people thought the location had been a nomadic people's temple complex. We need to shift our perspective now. All the evidence of everyday life, including tools, food scraps, and a dizzying assortment of subterranean buildings, points to a level of sophistication that no one had anticipated at that time. This could be one of the first known settlements, constructed long before humans even considered the possibility that such a thing might exist. It might also be the world's oldest monumental site. What else have we been doing incorrectly if that is correct? Let's take a deep breath and assess the situation objectively. For a long time, researchers thought Göbekli Tepe was primarily a religious site, a place where nomadic groups of hunter-gatherers would meet for prayer and rituals before scattering. Tall stone pillars adorned with abstract symbols, and animals stood alone at the location, devoid of any dwellings, streets, or kitchens. The 2025 breakthrough, however, began to change all of that. A few footnotes in old textbooks aren't the only thing that the new evidence affects. It appears more and more like a home, rather than a mere transitory location. How we identify the beginning of civilization has to be rethought if Göbekli Tepe was more than just a religious center and a residential area. The conventional wisdom holds that complex communities arose once people mastered farming, which entails settling down, growing crops, and raising livestock. Is it possible to invert that order? What if, before agriculture, the urge to unite arose, be it for religious or social reasons, or simply to work towards a common goal? It looks that way based on the data. There was clear forethought put into the site's design. Possibly having astrological or seasonal significance, each circle of pillars looks to be meticulously placed. Symmetry and repetition are evident. Their ideas of space, design, and purpose were carved into the stone edifice. They weren't stumbling around in the dark. But this occurred long before domestication, ceramics, or the use of metal implements. Göbekli Tepe was there before the wheel, writing, and pyramids of Egypt. Definitely not a weekend project. Its architecture features tons of pillars that tower over 16 feet tall. Cooperation, communication, duty assignment, and long-term teamwork were all necessary for such construction, characteristics more commonly associated with agricultural cultures than foragers. The locals, however, were formally still living the hunter-gatherer lifestyle. When new evidence of food processing, tool-making, and potential early domestication of plants or animals is considered, the picture takes on more clarity. Göbekli Tepe may have been one of the earliest sites where people attempted communal living, even if only for a short period of time. It was also a center of prayer. The foundations of settlement were already laid, regardless of how often or for how long they visited. The primary issue, therefore, becomes, was the desire to worship the driving force behind people's decision to live together, or was it the other way around? This second option, which is contrary to the first, is proposed by Göbekli Tepe. This previously unexplained location may now hold the key to our narrative. It doesn't take away our understanding of ancient civilizations. Rather, it adds to it by revealing that the need for belonging, purpose, and common ground may have been the original impetus for the development of agriculture, urbanization, governance, and culture. Rewriting history means completely reimagining the first chapter of human civilization, not just making little changes here and there. It is possible that the first page is Göbekli Tepe. We are now staring at a finding that fundamentally alters our view of ancient history, rather than just adding to it. We have relied on a tidy picture of human development for a very long time. When farming started, people settled down, built houses, had families, and then developed towns, temples, and governments. Our historical timeline is based on that sequence, which is known as the Neolithic Revolution among experts. However, a very different story emerges from Göbekli Tepe. Let's begin with the most shocking possibility. Pre-agricultural societies may have had permanent or semi-permanent populations. The plot is turned on its head by it. Perhaps people didn't need to cultivate to support their new way of life. Instead, they gathered, worshipped, and built before they ever considered farming as a means to establish towns. Consider, perhaps the urge for food security was less important than the desire to belong, to connect, and to build something greater than oneself. What motivated these ancient people to fashion elaborate structures out of enormous stone pillars, set them in circles, and embellish them with artwork? Hunger wasn't it. It was meaningful. People came together. Trust was the key. The megalithic enclosures and intricately carved symbols at Göbekli Tepe provide irrefutable evidence that people had established sophisticated religious systems thousands of years before the invention of writing or the wheel. Based on the amount of preparation, it is clear that these weren't just passing through. Structure, leadership, and purpose were all present. Another revolutionary thought follows from this. Hunter-gatherers weren't just nomadic. Divisions of labor, social stratification, and ultimate aims could have been present in some. They collaborated, exchanged information, and established a strong culture to finish tasks that would have taken years, if not decades, to do on their own. Those still in the dark about farming wouldn't do something like this. Plus, new research shows that the stone pillars were set in perfect circles and ovals, which suggests that the hunter-gatherers had a rudimentary understanding of geometry that was previously unrecognized. That level of architectural expertise suggests basic governance, work delegation, and planning meetings. And to this day, we still don't have any hard proof that farming was commonplace throughout the major building phase of Göbekli Tepe. Because of this, we have to think about things in a completely different order. What if people started farming because they wanted to create communal holy spaces? Regular gatherings necessitated the presence of local, dependable food supplies. They could only go so far with hunting and foraging as livelihoods. It is possible that farming did not originate as the spark that ignited civilization, but rather as a byproduct of it. How did the early builders sustain themselves as they carved and hauled enormous pillars? This is a subject that has never been asked before. In what ways did leadership take place? Who were the spiritual leaders, architects, artists, and planners? Were they involved in commerce with neighboring tribes? Were there any first forms of money? How were they united by myths and stories? Göbekli Tepe insists on asking questions like these, which are unusual when discussing hunter-gatherers. The amazing ripple effect becomes apparent when we step back and compare it to other ancient civilizations. Although Göbekli Tepe is thousands of years older than other ancient monuments, similarities do arise. Built in 3000 BCE, 6,000 years after Göbekli Tepe, Stonehenge is located in England. In both cases, people gathered in enormous circular enclosures that followed celestial patterns for some unknown reason. The Gantija temples in Malta were built for religious or ceremonial purposes and date back to around 3600 BCE. They were constructed from limestone and necessitated teamwork and ingenious architecture without the use of metal tools. The Taulas of Menorca are a group of T-shaped stone structures set in horseshoe-shaped courtyards that date back to about 1000 BCE. Their design is reminiscent of the enclosures at Göbekli Tepe, which may indicate that the idea of sculpting a place of worship endured. The Moai statues, Easter Island, constructed by the Rapa Nui people between 1250 and 1500 CE, these enormous stone sculptures serve as symbols of spirituality, politics, and culture, uniting and defining the islanders. Might other areas have been impacted by the concepts that originated at Göbekli Tepe? Community organization, symbolic art, shared holy places, and early engineering. Stories, migration, and commerce are common ways that cultures spread. The convergence of these cultures doesn't prove that they copied one another exactly, but it does show that early people on all continents shared an innate need to construct massive, long-lasting stone buildings. Where does Göbekli Tepe fit into the bigger picture, then? Civilization is like a lengthy discussion that has been going on for thousands of years. A strong message that others may have interpreted differently was made by Göbekli Tepe, one of the earliest speakers. Beyond symbolism, Göbekli Tepe provides an inspiration for how to communicate ideas via architecture, whether by the spread of culture, common human behavior, or concurrent evolution. Allegories of belonging, faith, and individuality abound, as does the desire to record one's presence with a tangible artifact. We were significant. Modern architectural styles evolved and progressed beyond Göbekli Tepe. The stone circles of Britain, the temples of the Mediterranean, and the gigantic figures of the Pacific all bear witness to its enduring vitality. These aren't random occurrences. Rather, they are parts of a larger narrative. That narrative may have begun with a nomadic band of hunter-gatherers in southeastern Turkey, carving into a dusty hill the stone pillars that would tempt future generations to rethink their assumptions about the dawn of civilization. Comparing these world landmarks side by side reveals more than simply that prehistoric people were capable of constructing massive structures. That they too pondered profound questions of location, time, and their place in the universe is the key. That dream continued to rise, a stone at a time, over many years and continents. The site of Göbekli Tepe reveals that our civilization did not start as previously believed. From sowing seeds to constructing cities, there was a diversion. It was unexpected, more creative, messier, and spiritual? What if, instead of marking the beginning of anything, the remains at Göbekli Tepe only reflected a much earlier event? We've been referring to it as the beginning, the cradle, or the spark, but what if it's actually more of a breadcrumb trail, a marker left behind by those who believed, organized, and built long before we did? This raises even more significant inquiries. Is there further evidence that additional sites, long since covered in dust, may still provide fresh information that challenges our current understanding? Could more advanced civilizations have ever existed but been wiped out by the elements or the passage of time? As we go farther, the past becomes more audible, not with a murmur of simplicity or disorder, but with a tale of its own, one that compels us to remain attentive. What if, after all we found at Göbekli Tepe, we weren't the first sophisticated civilization on Earth, but only the first to survive? How do you see Göbekli Tepe and our common history? Leave a comment with your ideas. Please support our channel by subscribing, like, and sharing videos. If you want to see more videos like this, just swipe to the next one.